Hello everybody, this is part 2 of this week's discussion for Pisa and the Mediterranean memory. And something I forgot to do, well, should have done in the first part of this presentation before addressing the overview of the readings was give us some map and geography so we have some context of where the areas that we're looking at. And this is from the Gemignani reading. So we've got the area of Granducal Tuscany colored in here. We've got Florence, Pisa over here, and this is the Tyrrhenian Sea. So these are the areas that we are looking at this week. So to move on to the discussion questions for this week, starting off with Cassidy Welch and Lester's Memory and Interpretation, New Approaches to the Study of the Crusades. I have 3 questions for this reading, and the first question, what is the difference between memory and remembrance? Do you agree with Cassidy Welch and Lester's distinction between the two? Why is such a distinction important? And what about the distinction between memory and historical narrative? And the second question, in their essay, Cassidy, Welch, and Lester discuss and define collective memory. As this week is titled Pisa and the Mediterranean Memory, how do some or all of the readings pertain to collective memory? What does collective memory look like in the United States? And the last question for this reading, how is Fernand Braudel's concept of the longue durée key to understanding Cassidy Welch and Lester's approach to the history of the Crusades? Moving on to the second reading this week by Sean Nelson, Relics of Christian Victory, the translation of Ottoman spolia in Granducal Tuscany. 2 questions for this reading, and the first question, how did the Grand Dukes construct a history of the Ottomans? And the second question, in his conclusion, Nelson notes that the display of Ottoman spolia was a medieval Christian tradition passed down from the Crusades. In cases such as this, do you think tradition is used as justification for conquest and display of Ottoman spolia? At what point does tradition need to end? And moving on to the third reading by Marco Gemignani, the navies of the Medici, the Florentine Navy, and Navy of the Sacred Military Order of St. Stephen, 1547 to 1648. 2 questions, and the first question, how did the Grand Dukes use the Florentine Navy and Navy of the Order of St. Stephen to increase and maintain international relations? And the second question, how did the Grand Dukes use the Florentine Navy and Navy of the Order of St. Stephen to establish and create a Mediterranean identity? And for the fourth and final reading this week by Vera Simone Schultz, Infiltrating Artifacts, the Impact of Islamic Art in 14th and 15th century Florence and Pisa. 3 questions, and the first question, by representing Oriental carpets in copies of the Annunciation fresco from the Annunziata in Florence, Schultz argues that the carpets establish a link to the miraculous image in Florence with its painted carpet and to actual Oriental carpets in the Mediterranean. How does this relate to Nagel and Wood's theory of substitution from anachronic Renaissance? And the second question, should we as art historians be required to know about Mamluk or Ottoman history given the several representations of Oriental carpets and Mamluk metalwork in Italian Renaissance art? What does it mean to ignore the inclusion of such objects? And the third question. Schultz argues that the two case studies she presents in her essay show that the appearance of Islamic artifacts cannot be grasped as a mere orientalization, but that imported artifacts could be localized and gain new meanings through their incorporation into paintings. Do you agree or disagree with this statement? How does this idea tie into the reading from last week about the appropriation of Chinese porcelain in Tuscany? And that is all that I have for you guys this week. I look forward to viewing all of your video responses and comments on the readings. And yeah, bye-bye. Stay well.